Hello, scholars. This is Principles of Accounting 2. This is the video for Study Guide 1. I am Professor Chris Jiggins, and today we're just going to go over a couple of the questions. I'm looking at them now, 6 of them on your study guide. These are the questions that I think are most pertinent or the direct to your success in the exam. I selected them, so hopefully they are helpful for you in completing your study and getting prepared in your preparation for the exam. So let's start with question number 2. So here's question number 2. You have used the following selected accounts of Delray Manufacturing for the year end December 31st. Let me tell you something. When it comes to managerial accounting, this is, think of it like a Lego set. So all the information is pretty much in front of you, and you need to put the information together. So it says, prepare a schedule of manufacturing, goods manufactured. The first thing that we're going to do is work on the materials. So the first account is going to be your direct materials. We're going to take the beginning raw materials inventory, and I believe the work in process, right? Take the beginning raw materials inventory, add the raw materials that we purchased, and subtract the ending raw materials. So we have beginning raw materials is 37,000. The raw materials purchases of 175,600. And then subtract the ending raw materials, which is 42,700. 42,700. Add these two, subtract that, and then you get the direct materials of 169,000. The second thing we're going to look at is direct labor. Direct labor is here at 225,000. So they give that to you, which is fantastic. So you put that in here. Right? And after that, we're going to work on factory overhead. Right? Factory overhead is the indirect labor, the repairs to the factory equipment, rent, cost of factory building, and selling expenses. I'm wondering, let's see. And a lot of times when I do this, I'm gonna just count how many accounts I'm using. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know about this. Maybe. No, see, I was right. My intuition was right. So 1, 2, 3. We just use those 3. The selling expenses, not. So 47,000 for indirect labor, 23,000 for repairs, and 57,000 for the building. 47, 23,000, 57. And so now we have the total overhead. We add that to the direct materials and the direct labor to get your total manufacturing cost. Now we're going to add the work in process in the beginning, which is 53,900. And that's what we got here. And then subtract the work in process at the ending, which is 41,500 minus 41,500. Gives you $534,300. That's how you calculate your schedule of cost of manufacturing. So that's the first step. Second step is that prepare the income statement for Delray and assume that the cost of goods manufactured is $534,300. That's really nice of them to give that. So with that income statement, we're going to start with sales, which is 1,250,000. So 1,250,000. Now we're going to go to cost of goods sold, We're gonna start with the beginning finished goods, which is 62,700. And we're gonna add that, the cost of goods manufactured. We're gonna add that to the cost of goods manufactured that was given. You know, that's crazy. They gave you the answer here. Normally you would have just took it off the schedule of manufacturing, but they gave it to you. Add these two together, you have the cost of goods available for sale, which is 597,000. Subtract the finished goods inventory, which is 67,300, minus 67,300, and you get the cost of goods sold of 529,000. Take the sales minus cost of goods sold, you get the gross profit. Subtract, now this is where the selling expenses and the general administrative expenses come into play. So the 94,000 and 124,000, we're gonna put them here. So take the gross profit minus the selling expenses minus the general administrative expenses, and you'll get the net income. And that's how you would create that income statement. So that is 2 and 3. The next question that I would concentrate on is 11 through 13. All right. So in this one, we're going to compute and record the job costs, recording the schedule of cost of goods manufactured. Marco Company shows the following cost for 3 jobs worked in April. So you have 306, 307, and 308. Here's a catch. If something is finished and sold, it's cost of goods sold. If something is finished and owned sold, it's in finished goods. And if it's in process, it's work in process. I'm saying that now because that's going to come up in this question. So raw materials inventory on March 31st was 80,000. Raw materials purchased in April were 500,000. The total factory payroll cost in April was 363,000. Actual overhead costs in April, indirect materials was 50,000, indirect labor is 23. Factory rent was 32,000. Factory utilities was 19, and factory equipment depreciation 51,000. The poor is 50% of direct labor. And job 306 has been sold for 635,000. So the first thing is they want you to determine the cost assigned, right? So they're going to have the 3 costs. The direct materials, the direct labor, and the overhead is going to be the same. All of this is going to be the same. All you're going to do is take these numbers here and bring them down. You add these up. The work in process in the beginning is 59,000 for job 306. For job 307 is 62,000. Job 308, they didn't start it. They didn't start it in March. They started in April. So you brought these numbers down. You add them. I'm sorry, you subtract them. You bring down the direct materials and the direct labor. You need to find the overhead. How do you find the overhead? Predetermined overhead is 50% of direct labor. As a result, you take the direct labor, bring up the calculator, 85,000, times that by 50%, and you get 42,500. So 42,500 for job 306. For job 307 is 75,000, and job 308 is 52,500. The direct labor, 105,000 times 50%, 52,500. Now you're going to add these 3, the direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. You get 262,500 for job 306, 445,000 for job 307, and 257,500 for 308. The total cost, you're going to take the work in process plus the cost you added in April, and you get 321,500 for job 306, 507,000 for job 307, 257,500 for job 308. As I stated before, finished and sold is cost of goods sold. That's what this drop down is about. Finished and unsold is finished goods inventory. In process is work in process. That's how you would complete the first step. The second step, they're going to give you these journal entries and they want, so this is basically me going back and saying, hey, how do you do the flow? Right? So material purchases on credit is a debit to the raw materials, credit to accounts payable. How did you get the 500,000? Raw materials purchases in April was 500,000. That's how you got the 500,000. So we're going to debit raw materials and credit accounts payable. Next, we're going to talk about the direct materials used. How much direct materials was used? I think it's 400. Direct materials used is 455,000. It's right here. So we're going to debit work in process, credit raw materials for the amount that we put in the direct materials. The next question is direct labor used. We're going to go back. It's 340,000. So we're going to debit our work in process and credit our cash for the 340,000 that we put in direct labor. Indirect materials used and assigned to factory overhead. The indirect materials we used in April are $50,000. So we're going to debit factory overhead and credit the cash for that amount. Oh, I'm sorry. For the indirect materials, we're going to debit, we're going to credit raw materials because it's sitting in raw materials. For labor, make sure I show you. So indirect labor is E. For indirect labor, we'll go back and get the indirect labor number is 23,000. So we're going to debit factory overhead and credit the cash for the 23,000 for indirect labor. For F, overhead cost applied to work in process. So overhead cost, so we're going to debit work in process, credit the overhead for 170,000. This 170,000. G, actual overhead cost incurred. So factory rent and utilities paid in cash. So factory rent was 32,000. Factory utilities was 19,000. So we're going to debit factory rent and factory utilities and credit the cash. Which number was that? G. So G here. So debit the overhead, credit the cash. Oh, they added the depreciation too. But it says factory overhead and costs incurred. Factory rent and prepaid are paid in cash. Oh, they're just saying which ones were paid in cash. So we're going to add those two together. Factory rent and utilities, 32,000 plus, 32,000 plus 19,000. We'll get 51,000. That's going to be a debt. That 51,000 is going to be paid in cash. So we're going to credit that to cash. The other 51,000, which is in equipment, is going to be credit to accumulated depreciation. And then the 102,000 is going to be a debit to factory overhead. So 102,000 debit to factory overhead, credit to cash, credit to the accumulated depreciation for it. What was that? F, G. Where's G? H, they transferred job 306 and 307 to finished goods. So 306 was 321,000, 307 was 507,000. So 321,500 plus 507,000 is 828,500. So we're going to debit finished goods and credit work in process for this amount. That amount. I, cost of goods sold for 306. 306, total cost was 321,500. So we're going to debit cost of goods sold, credit finished goods for 321,500. J, revenue from the sale of 306 received in cash. So we're going to debit cash, credit the revenue. We sold it for $635,000. So we're gonna debit the cash for $635,000, credit the revenue for $630,000. Last, close the underapply, overapply. So what happened here? Our overhead was needs to be credited because it was over by $5,000. How do we know that? Because the overhead apply was 170,000, but we only had 165,000. So let's do this. 50,000 plus 32,000 plus 19,000 plus 51,000. 152,000. Let's see. Okay, so 50, right? 23, 175. 50, 23, 32, 19, 51. So I have, maybe I didn't add them right. No. Oh, I didn't include the direct labor, indirect labor. Sorry. I didn't add them correctly. Let me see. Sorry about that. I don't think I added them correctly. Let's try this again. 50,000 plus 23,000 plus 32,000 plus 19,000 plus 51,000. Yeah, I didn't add them correctly. Sorry, I skipped one of these numbers. I think I skipped indirect labor. So I had 175. That's what actually happened. When I applied it, it was 170. So, and that's where you get the 5,000. So we need to credit the account for $5,000. And then that's it. No, I think there's something. Yeah. So schedule of cost of goods manufactured, direct materials used, right, is 455,000. Direct labor is 340,000. Overhead is going to be 170,000. So you just put those down here: 455,000, 340,000, 170,000. Add these three together, you get $965,000. What was beginning work in process? Beginning work in process was 21,000, 121,000. Sorry. So we're going to put that down here. Add this to the total manufactured cost. You get total cost in work in process is 1,886,000. Subtract that from the ending work in process. The ending work in process Thought it was a given. Oh, it's 257. Sorry, it's 257, 500. Because remember, this is the only good that's in work in process. Job 308 is in work in process. Job 307 is in finished goods. Job 306 is in cost of goods sold. So that how much is that? 257, 500. Subtract the 1,086,000 from 257,500. You get $828,500. And that's how you make that schedule for cost of goods sold. The last question I'll be doing this is 26. Oh, EEPs. EEPs, it just looks big, but they're very, very easy. So the first thing we're going to do is check our units. Check. Let me make this big. So the first thing we're going to do is check our units. So we're going to add these two. That's 16,000, 4,000 plus 12,000. Beginning plus units started in the period. And we're going to compare that to completed and transferred out and ending, which is 16,000. So that's the first thing. 4 plus 12, 16,000. 13 plus 3 is 16,000. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to work on this. Remember, conversion cost is direct labor plus overhead, because overhead is a function of direct labor. So everything that's completed and transferred out is 100% when it comes to direct materials and 100% when it comes to conversion. There were 13,000 units completed and transferred out. So, and then ending work in process had 3,000 units. Ending work in process was 100% complete as far as direct materials, 25 as far as conversion. So 100% and 25%. You get 3,000 EUPs for direct materials, 750 for conversion. Add these two together, you get 13,750 for conversion, 16,000 for EUPs. Now we're going to go to the cost of work. The direct materials was 2,880. Conversion was 5,358 for the beginning. Afterwards, it was $197,120 cost for the period. Conversion was $234,992. Add these two together, you get a total cost for direct materials of $200,000. For conversion, is $240,350. Divide the EUP, $16,000 and $13,750. You get a cost EUP of $12.50 for direct materials and $17.48 for conversion. Now we're going to come back and I think we're reconciling now. So you'll take completed and transferred out. It was 13,000 EUPs for direct materials, 13,000 for conversion. Multiply by $12.50 for direct materials and $17.48 for conversion. You get a total cost for direct materials of $162,500. For conversion, you get a total cost of $227,240. Add these two together, you get $389,740. When it comes to ending work in process, you have 3,000 units when it comes to direct materials and 750 units when it comes to conversion. Direct materials is $1,250, conversion is $1,748. Multiply these out, you get direct materials is $37,500. Conversion is $13,110. Add them together, you get $50,610. Add this to completed and transferred out, and you get $440,350. That's it. So you don't have to reconcile. I hope this helps with your studying for exam 1. I wish you nothing but the best of luck on your exam. Don't forget, I'm rooting for you the whole way. And let me stop sharing. And have a fantastic day.